right, so we're here for a sweet episode of the Throws Show, and we're fortunate that we got Coach Lucais MacKay from Penn State University.
The Throws Show.
The Throws Show.
Good. Awesome.
So, Lucas, we had, just to get right into it, because we got mayhem behind us right now, where everybody's sort of preparing for the Big Throws Clinic, and which is happening tomorrow. Going over your career quickly as a coach, and you were an NCAA champion yourself as a hammer thrower.
Correct.
If we go over quickly, you had Alex Young at Southeastern, Chase Ely and Nick Miller at Oklahoma State, and now at Penn State you've had how many All-Americans within, 2 years, 3 years?
I don't know how they count All-Americans, but I guess a few people.
Right, and
people are going to NCs. I know that.
Taking somebody like Morgan Chigo from 64
dumpster fire Morgan,
to 72.
Yeah, I got him at 62 meters. He's at 72 now. So that happens with everyone. That's just how it goes. It's just that simple. Yeah, it's annoying.
So. And hearing about your presentation at the Track Coaches Association or whatever down in Texas, I think it was
NTCCCCCA.
I think a few people were sort of like, oh wow, so maybe this is how we should have a different approach. And I'm going to pass the mic to Trevor, because I think he's got a little bit better questions regarding hammer a little bit first before you get into the management stuff, that you can sort of share about what has made you so successful in such a short period of time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, first of all, I like as like a collegiate throws coach myself, trying to get on like the stage, like looking up to like what you're doing right now, and like managing a whole lot of athletes, managing five different events rather than what we typically work with at the garage with just shot and disc.
Shot and disc, yeah.
Like, how do you first maybe determine, like, when a freshman first comes on campus, like, whether they're going to be working the hammer? Do you have everyone try it? And then kind of from then on, how do you manage, like, all the groups of throwers?
Yeah, no, definitely a good question, and the challenge of our job. I think it depends on a few factors. One, what type of program you're in. If you're at a smaller Division I and you're trying to be competitive on the conference level, that'll determine a lot. If you have the ability to try kids out in events and take your time developing them, and if they're maybe developed by year 2 or 3, then that's considered a success if they're making the conference final. Or if you're a more conference-heavy national type team, and you've got a few blue chippers on your team, and you're trying to get people to nationals or win or medal, at the conference level, or even at the national level, then you obviously have to wear less hats. You're going to be a discus thrower that can easily throw 18 meters in the shot. Okay, then we're going to spend 2 days a week with that second event. And then looking at a third event, that's definitely the most tricky part, and not a lot of programs do it. I think probably I've always been coming from small college, junior college. My father was a junior college coach for centuries, and just something I grew up around. Everyone threw everything. So you're typically doing track camp on a regular weekly basis, and everyone's learning, and you find the commonalities between shot and discus, and then correlate those to the hammer, or you're doing the same thing with the hammer and finding good transfer over to the shot and disc. But I think you got to have an idea what you're trying to accomplish in the program, and then an idea of what the individual's goals are. Mm-hmm. If the number one high school shot putter comes in and they want to be a shot putter and they're resistant to learning that second event or third event, then you got to look at how long you're going.
We won't say any names.
Just hypothetically, yeah. Like if a program were to be able to do that, then you got to figure out how long you're gonna ride that horse until you take a stop and say, okay, maybe we come back to it. Yeah. Sometimes it's just managing the athlete. So if a top level athlete and they're a discus thrower, but their discus is bad, but their shot put's going well, maybe they stay a little bit more level. If A and B are not going well and you try to add C and then they feel like we're not focused, then you got to look at that. And that's, I think that's the art of coaching. And figuring out what type of program you are, and if you've got 6 throwers or 8 throwers or 16 or 20 or, North Dakota, he's at 28 throwers.
Yeah.
It's like you got a B team, so you can't do too much.
What I get blown away by is knowing some of the personalities you have to deal with now, but also some of the serious personalities you've dealt with very well in the past and managed very well. And I think about where we're lucky, at least for me, being a private system, I can basically just be like,
this is how you act.
yeah, no, go the
This is
fuck
how you
away.
act here at Garage.
Yeah. If you're going to be annoying, leave.
That's fine,
Go elsewhere. And I think that, that's one benefit of what I have.
Private sector, yeah.
But for you, it's like, dude, you got to deal with that shit.
For the most part, yep.
That's one thing. It's like, how? And maybe it is because you are a lot more relaxed.
Yeah.
Your tendencies tend to be
Yep.
more relaxed, Southern California.
Yeah. Versus
versus me, where I just want to kill
Yep.
people who are annoying.
Yeah, so I read an article in Sports Illustrated that was it was a quote by Luke Walton, and he's talking about being raised by Bill Walton. And he's a white basketball player that's coming from NBA money. So not the most hood kid you're ever going to meet. But it's funny because you look at where he was in his career and you look at, what he did as a player and then where he's at now. And, he's a pretty important role. And, as a white basketball player, you got to be able to walk into different homes and be able to relate. And I remember reading that article, and I think he's a little younger than me, but I remember reading that article, and his quote was, my dad raised me to be able to go into any home or any setting and be able to melt and mesh. And I just kind of I remember reading that, and that kind of, rung a bell with me. I was like, that's kind of like how I am. And I don't know if it's from being raised in California with white, black, brown, you name it, in the culture and being really mixed up, and then playing all the sports. So, playing with older guys and, just being able to know when to be quiet, know when to go left, when to go right, and just, be malleable. I think through that you got to have a common thread and be yourself. And when things matter, make sure that your athletes know they matter and you're working with them and everything. But I try to create, an environment where, this is the theme of us, but everyone has their ability, their own room to be themselves, and I try to foster it. I think that's really important with female athletes as well, to be able to do that. Chase Healy's a really big personality, and coming in and having her for 1 year and managing her to NCAA runner-up was something that I think, in the weeds, in the middle of it, I was, a few times you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get through this, but, you take a few days and be mad at each other and not talk, and then come back and put some work in. As long as we know what the goals are, then it's like, okay, we can be mad or not talk or do talk or, in the meantime. But, yeah, no, that's the art.
Yeah. So, now, I don't know if you overlook it personality and obviously there are physical characteristics of what makes a hammer thrower. I don't know, have you ever seen any correlation with personality and how, and maybe just carrying that back to what you look for when you first get a freshman at your school, and what goes into your decision on whether they could be a good hammer thrower or not?
Yeah, sure. As far as personality traits of a hammer thrower, it's kind of a funny one because that's typically analytical, detail-orientated, and being a little bit on the neurotic side with certain things. That's a pretty good trend across the board as far as for the men, probably for the women as well. But physical characteristics being also, I think my biggest factor would be not being too careful. My dad would always ask, would you rather do a front flip or a back flip? And the answer for hammer thrower is back flip. No one wants to go backwards because you don't get to see what's behind you. So you can't be scared, but you got to know that if I do this right and trust it, then I'm going to be fine. So going into that unknown, I think is really important. And then the other question is would you rather build the sandcastle or would you rather knock it over? and typically knocking it over. But the analytical side is building it and doing all the detail and getting the moat right and doing all that stuff. So that's definitely part of it. I think physical characteristics, having a strong back, being able to hinge and pull well, and then having good proprioception, foot awareness, just position in space is one of those intangible factors that's former gymnasts, soccer players. Those would be the traits I look for first. And you don't have to be 6'4" with a 6'6" wingspan in the hammer. You can put your arms together. Now we're half the radius, and now we're kind of equal. Sean Donnelly's a great example of that. You're not going to be an All-American in the primary shot and discus, but boom, put it together, put in the work, learn how to train right, and he's the best American hammer thrower we've had in a while. And he's pretty self-made. So
I was just thinking. I think what's interesting with your analysis. Run me through your analysis of Morgan and why he is as good at the hammer as he is. Is it because of his just being gifted?
Yeah.
Or
part of it, for sure.
And is it, has he matured from a technical perspective? Because it's, I think jokingly we always sort of say with him, like, oh, Morgan just did 3 sets of front squats at 175 kilos or something ridiculous, but then he sat on the bench for
45 minutes.
45 minutes and then left. And it's like partially true and partially not, but probably more so than not. But, so has he grown as an athlete from the technical, comprehension side?
Yeah, he has. He needs to do more. He almost had a perfect season last year. You get 1 or 2 outliers, but almost everything went up. And then he had 3 PBs at NCs. No one does that.
Right.
But he was tight as a drum at the qualifying meet and had 2 fouls. So the technical maturation part has come along. Obviously, going 62 to over 70, that has to get better. Still hates to do drills. Still hates to do the extra work, but now verbally realizes that he needs to do it more. Yeah. So that's getting there. The joke with him is to always conserve, and that's actually something that Nick Miller was a proponent of as well. It's I do work that's strictly for the hammer and not much else. Not a long warm-up, not a lot of mobility. The physicality of the hammer thrower is a little bit more stiff, a little bit more rigid through the posture, not as mobile, in the upper torso. So that kind of fits Morgan just because that's the dude he is walking in the door. And he's a really strong back and a good hinger and obviously a good, Olympic puller at least.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that somebody like from my perspective and just, seeing him this week in the gym at Garage Strength, it's even talking to him a little bit, it's do you realize what you can be?
How good you are now.
How good you are now, what you could be, and not just because of who he is, but because of the system he is in with you and being in State College, where it's sort of geographically close to home. It's a very comfortable situation. His parents are supportive, and he has you as a coach. And it's for me, it's Morgan,
go be a pro.
You could be the best hammer thrower in America in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's is that something he's
starting to talk about it? Yeah, for sure. He's he started to talk about it last year. I think having Darrell as kind of the old uncle, right? And he was his host on his visit. And he knows that Rel is out there doing his professional thing, and he sees it, so it's tangible. And then he's seen Mike Shuey graduate out of the program, who's now out in San Diego at the training center as well. So he's got 2 Penn Staters there who he knows. So that's a really tangible thing that you can be all I have to do is do my job, stay on the course, and that's probably going to be me.
Right.
So not a lot of programs can say that, and not a lot of schools and coaches can say, that's happening. So that's super cool. And I think having you as his home gym and being raised in that environment as well, he sees all the success that's around, and there's definitely a pride to that. But now we're starting to talk about it as well, kind of talking it into existence. He started to a little bit when we went to our first USAs. And I just kind of filed it away, maybe this kid's going to get serious. And then, you see a little bit of extra work.
That was one in Sacramento?
Yeah. And then, I watched him kind of handle himself, not freak out at the meet, too. And I think that's something that, that's another intangible factor. Like, I think he likes the big time.
Right.
Once
Yeah,
he's there, he likes it.
Yeah.
And he's has confidence that he's had, 2 fouls. I'm like, okay, I just need to relax, and then had success. So, but he's already talking about this time next year and what classes he has in the spring. And he's got a great schedule set up, and we're gonna kill it. We're gonna break our sessions up and train exactly like a hammer thrower. So that'll be really fun to see. And there's 1 or 2 technical things that if we improve, he should throw further.
So that was my next question, because we had a little bit of this discussion last night with Sean, with Morgan. And I think we went over this a little before when we had done like the podcast I had before this that sort of failed because I didn't have Jason working for me. Using like technical models, give me 3 hammer throwers that you look to, like these are the ones that if there's a high school kid, somebody like Morgan watching, like, hey, this is what we got to watch.
Yeah, it's a tough one. The hammer is the hammer is one of those events where like it's a really big book, and I liken it to saying like, what chapter do you like best in the book, but you haven't read any of the book yet. So you don't know what to compare it to yet. And like hammer throwing, there's some biomechanical things that have to happen, acceleration and double support, a pretty vertical axis, and an accelerating ball pattern, high point and a low point, like those things need to happen. Yeah. But like who that looks like, tough, up to a certain point. Like my personal preferences, Litvinoff is one of my favorites. And then pound for pound, Americans, Lance Steele and Kevin McMahon, pretty sick. Kevin McMahon probably even more so because he's smaller and a smart Georgetown guy and someone that's just kind of outside the box and really, worked his way through stuff. But yeah, I mean, for high school kids just looking at it, it's hard because there's little nitpicky differences that you can be like, no, I don't like Daniel Roberts' throw, but I love Sean's. And it's like, they're 80% the same. You're accelerating the ball in double support. You do heel turns. It's pretty much the same. So hammer gets real picky, though. It gets real, this camp doesn't like that camp, and you do this, therefore because it's like there's one slice of pie. The hammer is the redheaded stepchild of the throwing events, outside of the jumping event, which is the javelin.
So what if you tell us real quick, with the hammer, what you see as the 3 most common mistakes, even like collegiate throwers, like better collegiate throwers make in the throw? Okay,
clickbait. Everyone pushes the hammer, and if I were to have a clickbait title, it would be "There is no push." There is no push, and what that means is you're 2 feet on the ground and the ball's out in front of you, but you're moving. You're kind of supposed to be moving this way or more moving left. So I don't know how you push. Obviously, it's as simple. It's verbiage, and I don't get caught up on words necessarily. But so everyone learns shot and discus first, traditionally, and then you learn hammer. So everyone goes left if you're a right-handed thrower. You turn, you shift left, you load left, you unseat, you do something left first in the throw. And so then you pick up the hammer, and so almost everyone pulls. They overturn at their left side, and the right side can't turn at the same rate that the left is. So everyone pulls with their left. Everyone talks about getting the ball long left and pushing, and I don't think getting the ball long left is necessarily a focus. It's a result of getting back and countering the hammer acceleration between this counter zone, which is 0, somewhere before 0, somewhere after 0. And I think not everyone, I think a lot of people overturn. So if you're at 0 degrees and you're throwing at 180 degrees, a lot of people turn to 90 or more than 90, and I think you need to turn a little less than 90. And that was a big one for me. Like I learned to turn to 90, if not more, and then step. And
so is that in reference to when the right foot leaves the ground?
Right foot picks up, yeah. So it's double support until 90, and then single support, and then get the right foot back down at 270 or somewhere between 270 and 300, 320. And so you want to maximize double support. And so if someone reads that maximize double support and you work it, you're going to throw with your upper body a little bit because there's no body counter. Because you have to undercomplete each turn. You can't turn 360 degrees, because then you'll be even, and you can't unseat and have your shoulders and hips back behind the ball. So you overturn, and then you have to like aim the ball with your arms. So that doesn't work out very well. Yeah, so everyone overturns with the left. There is no push, and you have to move backwards in the hammer. Hammer is a backwards linear event, not necessarily a sideways event.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
It's going to help you, Trevor.
Yeah, it will. Now I'm going to be turning out 74-meter hammer throwers.
Pennsylvania made, dude. Let's go. Well, Morgan's going to need someone to babysit him when he comes home for the weekend, so that'll be good. We'll put that together.
I think even going off of that further, like talking about a little bit what we were talking about earlier with managing personalities and the different events, is it's like
totally different.
And on top of that, like, you know, we had just done a lecture on getting inexperienced throwers versus getting experienced throwers, and I think about like Peyton versus Morgan, and it's like
year 1, year 4,
yeah, and then on top of that you got and then you get these other athletes that might be completely raw and have no background in the sport at all.
Yeah.
And from I guess my question is like, it's almost in some cases you might prefer that as a coach.
Then you can mold.
Yeah, and you don't have to deal with like breaking down the barriers that they might have established because they came from a system where they, you know, or they believed in it so much or whatever. And it's like, you got to sit there as a coach and be like, I got to bang these down first and then break, and then form it. So it's like, how do you handle that? Because, you know, again, it goes back to, you've got to deal with it. You got to, that's something that you have to establish. Or is it just an ongoing personality, like person to person, that you have to figure out?
No. I mean, it's definitely an ongoing development. You know, athlete A, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. If they're having success, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. You're going to be going to meets. You know, the groups are going to get smaller. You're going to spend more time in the weight room, prepping, all that stuff. So you get to, like, I know Morgan on so much more of a coach-athlete level now with depth than I did in year 1. You know, and it wasn't necessarily, it's a lot of listening in year 1, you know, and then, okay, we need to change those 2 things, but we can keep these and live with those, and we'll work on those next. Constant development for sure. I do think the throwing events have a little bit more personality types attributed to them. You know, shot put's a little bit more aggressive, big picture, simple. We're going to be on balance out of the back, get my feet down, smash the ball. You know, discus, maybe a little bit more longer fluid, maybe a little intense, but maybe a little more laid back, maybe a little bit more fluid, you know, that types of things. Javelin, I think, is, you know, kind of correlates to discus, and then hammer can be kind of a different combination of the two. There's so many, you know, European guys kind of dominating it that I think for a lot of time, my age bracket, everyone was trying to do what they did, you know, and not really knowing exactly what they did because they're coming from an 8-10 year training, you know, age, and then you're stepping in trying to mimic what their video looks like, and you don't know what the hell their background is.
Right.
So yeah, that's something that definitely develops from year 1 moving forward. You're not ready to read chapter 5 until you read chapters 1 through 4 and know them. So there's things that I'm sure I'm going to want to do psychologically with Peyton that we're not even going to discuss yet because we're still working on just simple technical tasks and not being in a kind of a learning mindset versus a performance or a competition mindset where you're going to kind of, you know, be hard on yourself if things aren't going the way that you like them. So, you know, it's like we're not ready to cross that bridge yet. We'll discuss it and say, hey, file this away. Maybe there's something we're going to work on this spring or when we're ready.
Right.
So definitely a challenge with the new ones. It's harder to break people down and get them to a neutral technique and then put your spin on it.
Yeah.
Which this fall has been super duper busy, you know, on that front, having 3 freshmen, you know, and everyone having pretty ingrained, on the girls' side, having pretty ingrained motor patterns. And 80% of the motor patterns are exactly are good.
Yeah.
But it's getting rid of those other ones and putting other ones in place that are far more difficult than from scratch.
I think even what you just said too, it's like, year 1 through potentially year 5. Where I would struggle with that the most would be keeping in mind that there's huge payout in 3, 4, maybe even 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Those years where it's like,
Because you want to get it.
yeah, and so it's like this might be terrible to deal with for 6 to 8 months, and then everybody's gonna be okay. Now now it's worth it.
I have to think of myself as the mad scientist when I'm like stuck on that, because I'm like, oh my god, these non-reverses are so boring right now.
Yeah.
But and then that's also, you get some good buy-in from the athlete if they're like, this is gonna be worth it, right? And if on the other side that it's gonna turn into a step over, and then the step over is gonna become a slow reverse, is going to become a more dynamic reverse, and then the ball is going 2 meters further.
Right.
Like with Chase, and it was like, okay, that's that mad professor of like, it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, and then she goes to the Olympic trials and tore it up.
Right.
So I guess I have 2 more questions where it's like, I want to know, well, mainly one, because you did train for so long post-collegiately, if there's like one thing that you could change. And the reason why I'm asking it is because I get so many post-collegiate athletes.
Sure.
It's like, what would you have changed or altered in your path post-collegiately, looking back on it? Or is there, is it just, no, I'm happy with where I was?
Knowing what you know now is a valuable aspect. I wish that, for me, I was still toying with discus, which I still am. So I guess that's that's not going to change. But
or the whammer,
or the whammer, or the hammer of the weight. I think post-collegiately, Coach Babbitt gave me really good advice and was like, try to live below your means, stay with the same coach, be consistent. Once you find something that works, like, go to Georgia Tech as your opener. Go do the same things. Be consistent. Don't fish around for shiny objects, which is still great advice. And I definitely, he did that. But I was searching for a little bit too much technique. I think for me, my technique was 80% good enough to throw much further than I threw. I took too long to get strong. Well, I'm still not strong, so I never got strong. Good technique and everything. Coach Babbitt told my dad, and we're talking over one break, he said he's probably a world-class driller. Like, he's really good at doing the drills, and it still looks really nice. But when it comes down to it, they only measure distance. So I was missing horsepower. And it was one of those things where it was always focused on technique, and every coach I had, including my dad, it's easy to get strong. It's easy to get strong. It's easy to get strong. And it's funny looking back. I'm like, I wish someone would have pressed timeout and said, like, okay, so we should get strong now, because your technique's pretty smooth. Discus, I threw 60 meters as an 18-year-old in the disc, like with the 2K.
How far?
I threw 60. Yeah, I know, and that was with under a 300-pound bench.
So why did you stop throwing discus?
Every coach was saying, well, that would be the other thing to change. It was number 1 in the nation in the discus, and then that 60 meters came my redshirt freshman year. But then the hammer was still catching up, and you're younger in the hammer. So Dan Lang, my father, and then Don Babbitt, like, discus is there, it looks good. Okay, let's work on this. Because that was like the motor patterns were just kind of still there in the discus.
This actually goes into, and I know we're getting hungry, but this goes into one problem I have that I brought up a little bit on the drive here, was like, take that for an example. I would be like, no, you're not touching the hammer, you're just throwing disc. But that's my mental perspective, because I'm not in the system of what you're in with scoring points and all that. And that's where it's like, how do you handle that as a coach, where it's like, you get Luke, even look at that
David
Morgan.
Lucas, Morgan.
Yeah. And with Morgan too, it's like
David Lucas is a discus thrower that accidentally won an NCAA title on the weight.
Yeah.
That's literally what happened last year.
And it's
we were focusing on discus all year.
And it's same with Morgan. It's like, Morgan, he could throw shot well, or discus well.
He just threw he won our blue-white inter squad in the shot.
Yeah, so it's like, but at the same time, it's like, well, his real potential's in the hammer.
In the hammer, yeah.
So screw it. And I think that's where you're at right now with his training. Anyway.
And you come back to that first question, which was like, what type of program are you in? What's the objective? If you're at Southeastern Louisiana, you could have 6 guys in the shot final. You could have 6 guys in the discus final and 8 in the hammer, and just ruin the conference. But if you're at, Penn State and you're trying to win Big Tens and be a top 10 national team every year, then you got to look at like, all right, what's your priority? What do you want to do? I want to do all 3. Okay, if you want to do all 3, then you got to be good in school. You got to manage. You got to eat. You got to stretch. You got to do mobility. You got to do all this stuff on the side. And then with our 20 hours that we get with you during the week, we need to be able to handle business and do 3 events. Yeah. That means you can't get hung up on event 2 when it doesn't go well on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. You got to turn the page, or have good days all the time. That'd be fine as well. Yeah. So you got to look at what type of program you're in. But I'm getting a little bit more that way. Small D1, everyone throws everything. You're a primary event, secondary event, third event. Sometimes it's even making the final. Right. And if you're making the final, you're taking points away from someone else. But we're starting to get to a point now where, I don't need everyone to throw the shot. I don't need 2 shot putters or 3 shot putters. Right. So we're getting a little bit more that way. But the team's getting better, and the Big Ten is super competitive. So you don't get a chance to just throw it. Right.
All right, I think I'm going to do our red hot minute, Trevor.
Ooh. Rapid fires.
I think I have 3. I have one that I think is. I have one that I think is
PC.
No, it's almost unfair. I have one that's unfair only
because
I just had kids, so I think I know what your answer is going to be, because you're probably just going to tell me to shut up. So can we start?
Yeah. Red hot minute.
Boy or girl?
Ooh. Healthy.
Yes, that's
We're not going to know. Yeah, we're
that's good. That's the best. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, I think either way.
Yeah, absolutely. Hammer or discus?
Discus.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
When I wake up with cold sweats at night, it's because I didn't fulfill my lifelong obligation in the discus. I feel like I did in the hammer, making the, didn't make an Olympic team, but making 3 finals or 2 finals in Olympic trials, and doing all the other shit that I did. Like, I feel okay about it, and I learned how to coach it really well. Yeah. I think that was my mission, and I didn't know it at the time. Right. I thought it was to make an Olympic team, but studying under all the best coaches in the U.S. and the hammer, I think kind of was my gift. I didn't know that I was getting that.
Right.
So discus, selfishly.
Fish or Grateful Dead?
Neither. Neither. No, not a jam band guy.
Well, when you were talking about,
I guess Grateful Dead because they're from NorCal.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about Bill Walton and Luke Walton, I was going to bring that in because he's a huge Grateful Dead fan. That's what made me think about that.
Yeah. Respect them a lot. Love what they did. Just never got into it.
You got one, Trevor?
I got 2. Okay. Let's go more technical one first. Let's go John Powell or Robert Harding, technique-wise.
Harding.
What about?
Come on.
There's totally different eras. I thought it was going to be Powell or Wilkins.
Yeah, well, okay, let's do that one. How about that? I had 2, and I decided to mesh them together.
Wilkins.
Okay.
Powell or Wilkins, Wilkins. Wilkins is one of my discus mentors. Okay. The tattoo on the inside of my right arm is based off of Mac Wilkins.
Really?
Yeah.
What about then Alekna and Harding?
Yeah, I almost need to see those again because I haven't seen Alekna in a minute. I think Alekna.
Okay.
I think he was, that's a toughie. That's a toughie.
I don't know what I'd take.
I mean, the longevity. I'm just thinking purely from an art standpoint and like what I visually prefer to see, probably. Yeah. Either, but I guess if I had to vote, I'd go alphabetical.
Okay.
And go Alekna.
All right, and my last one, favorite state to live.
Pennsylvania.
Ooh, all right, yeah.
I was gonna ask Oregon or PA, and I was like, I don't know. Ask that because it's so pointed.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's
a
where
tough
I was
one.
like,
lived in a good amount of states.
Yeah, this is my 7th state. We really love Pennsylvania, though. It's obviously it's a little tricky to get from your place to ours. Yeah. I wish that there was a California highway in between the two. Right. But then again, then it wouldn't be rural central Pennsylvania if you had highways all over the damn place. But no, I really like PA. I like the outdoors, and the fly fishing in Oregon and Pennsylvania are totally different, but you get the same, opportunities. And I like having the seasons too.
Yeah. All right, I think it's time for us to go eat. So thank you, Coach MacKay, for being on the Throw Show. Peace.
Peace.